All right, good evening, everyone. We have a work session tonight before the regular scheduled meeting regarding South County Health on the current parking options for the hospital, including possible use of space at the Public Services Building. Jim, I'm going to go to you to give us sort of a summary of what we've been working on with the hospital and where that stands now. We also have the General Counsel of South County Health, Andrew Prescott, with us here tonight, so we'll be able to hear from him. But Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. At the request of a couple of council members, they'd asked for an update on South County Health's purchase and sales on the DPS building. So for those that, it's the old police station on Route 1 where the big tower is. That's the building we're talking about, right across from the marina. So on January 22nd of 2024, we were in executive session, and I brought to the town council that the South County Health was interested in purchasing the DPS building, that building I just spoke about, and we were working on some agreement. So the price, that was when the purchase and sales was actually given to the council. So and was later signed. So the agreement in the P&S is that South County Health would pay the town $330,000 in cash for the property, and also they would then take custody of the property, knock down the DPS building, and agreed to put up a new EMS building where the one currently sits. So the DPS building's an old building built in the 50s. Connected to it is an EMS station, 2 bays, where there's 2 rescues, that was built approximately 10, 12 years ago. So that's a cinder block addition to that building that's in the back part where the playground is over that way, in that parking area. It was signed on the 22nd of January, but it was also extended in June 30th, for an additional 3 months while the due diligence of South County Health was being done on this property. And it was extended to September 30th. 20th, I'm sorry, 20th. And so what's the update? The update is that South County Health is currently meeting with, in the very near future, an architect to get us a definitive price that it would be for them to build a building there. But when I met with Mr. Robinson, who's the president and CEO of South County Health, and Mr. Prescott, one thing that I told them that I would conceptually agree to, but the council would ultimately have to agree to this, is because that cinder block building, the EMS building, that is currently there, attached to the DPS building, I would not object if they knock down the DPS building, keep the double bay, the cinder block building attached to it, which is not old, and put an addition on it for sleeping quarters and a roof above it. Because really we'd be duplicating the exact structure, only several feet closer to Route 1. So because of cost is extremely high to build a brand new building. So we'd be knocking down a perfectly good piece of the building, then moving it over. So conceptually, I'm okay with that, as long as the town could get what it needs, a new, EMS, totally renovated EMS facility. So that's where we are now. The initial cost for the new building was extremely high. So Mr. Robinson came to me and said, are we willing to talk about this? I said, yes. So now we're getting a cost estimate on a renovation of the existing EMS part of that building. That's the update I have for you right now. So the question is it build new versus renovate? That's the question we have.
All right. Andrew Prescott, you are here. Come on up. We'd like to hear from you as well.
How's that?
Yep, we got you now.
Yeah, I agree with everything the town manager said. I just add a little more detail to that. I had a conversation with Lucas Murray recently, and we've been struggling to come up with a plan that will provide the EMS facility that the town needs and that we agreed to provide in the purchase and sale at a cost that South County Health can afford. That's been the struggle, and we've gone out to architects and builders and got estimates, and everything has just come back prohibitively costly. So the most recent suggestion was that we work with, I think the name of the entity is Union Studios, to have a new design and estimate produced. So there would be a set of initial schematics, preliminary, and an initial estimate, and provided that that comes back in the ballpark of what we can afford going forward, we would then go and get more definitive plans and a more definitive estimate as quickly as possible, and then go ahead and begin the project, essentially. Close on the sale and begin on the project. So I think we all regret it's taken so long to get to this point, but as the town manager said, the costs have just been so high that we have to be stewards of our nonprofit dollars and come up with something that serves the town's purposes, but also we can afford. That's been the process.
So what's your ballpark? What can you afford? What's the max you can afford to expend to get this done?
I don't think we've sort of set that in stone, but something that's $3, $4, $5 million is not affordable. So it's got to be significantly lower than that. I think we've got an idea sort of a range in mind, and we'll see if.
Do you feel comfortable sharing that range?
I would prefer not to, honestly, because we're going to the architect and asking for a set of schematics. Actually, the town is going to provide sort of the design parameters to the architect, and they're going to come back with something for the town. The town's going to say, okay, this fulfills our needs, and the designer will say, here's the price we think we can deliver that for. And then we're going to have to iterate on the South County Health side as to whether or not we can come up with that money. And that, of course, depends on the capital funds we have available at the time. And I don't want to say it's $750,000, but if they come back at $1 million, that's a deal breaker, because I don't think we're there yet in terms of specificity.
And you're working with Jamie Rabbit on the schematic designs there? Planning director? You say
no.
Working with the town to get some of the planning schematics to help move us along. Are you working with the planning director, Jamie Rabbit, on that?
I don't think Jamie directly. I think I've been talking to Lucas about it.
Jamie's the one that worked on him to get him to this
Yeah.
point, and then Luke's been working with Andrew on as the liaison.
But the idea is that the town is going to work directly with Union Studios so that we're sure that what comes back is suitable for the town, and then we'll see what price is attached to that.
Good.
So as I recall, I believe when we met in executive session, we talked about an identified source that you had on the hospital side. That was part of why we were agreeing to all this, because we were presented with the fact that you might have either a donor or several donors who are going to fund the project.
Yeah.
So I don't want to jeopardize that, because I believe that's important, but that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
No, we
Okay.
do have philanthropic funds that are available for the project.
Okay.
We have a donor that will hopefully hang in there with us as we get to a point where we're ready to construct this.
Right.
And if all those things align, we'll be able to do the project. And I expect we'll get there. I'm optimistic that we'll get there. So we'll see.
So that's what I'm sort of confused about. Personally, I like the idea of trying to renovate, because why throw away things that are usable
Sure.
if you can improve upon it? And if the
Sure.
town is agreeable to the addition of sleeping quarters, it makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
And also it might be more efficient cost-wise, but I'm just curious why you don't think that the $1 million would be enough for that?
Because in part, that's only one piece of the project, right? We have the land acquisition costs, we have the construction costs, we have the There are costs associated with whatever archaeological work needs to be done on the property. As I think all of you know, what you think a project costs today is not what a project costs in 6 months from now. So there are a lot of moving pieces. But we do absolutely still have philanthropic funds that have been set aside for this particular project. And we hope that we can bring it in at a level where that will cover the cost for us.
Okay. And then you did mention the second question I had, which is about archaeological.
Yep.
So that was the whole reason why we shifted away from the park. So what testing have you done, and how would you ensure that you were sensitively developing or not developing the land?
So the archaeological firm Gray and Pape has already done preliminary testing on the site. This was sort of the first level testing, which involves, this is beyond my technical knowledge, but sort of x-raying the grounds to determine what might be underneath there. They have rendered a report based on that testing. We have shared that report with the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Commission, as well as the tribe. There are certain time periods set aside for those parties to respond to that report. And then there would have to be a process where there was sort of a tripartite agreement about how we would approach whatever findings there are on the site. So that may be avoiding certain areas altogether. It may be limiting excavation to, a very low level. There may be a variety of approaches. We're just not there yet. I expect that we'll probably have to do some test pits like we did last time. So we'll see.
So just to follow up, is that report only in the hands of the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Committee in the tribe, not the town? The town doesn't have a copy yet?
Correct.
Okay.
As far as I understand. And you may remember last time we ran into some issues with, potential violations of federal law about,
Right.
Who's entitled to such a report. I am told by Rhode Island Historic, RIHPHC, that if there is an access to public records request, then they're going to have to seek legal counsel. They're going to have, there might be a redacted report that gets released, but we want to be very careful about the dissemination of that, not to hide anything, but to make sure we're in compliance with federal law and regulation.
Right, because that's what happened, is that somebody just simply app-read it and the report came out and then it all happened.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What was the name of the firm that did the X-ray?
Gray and Pape.
And what?
Pape, P-A-P-E.
Okay.
They were the same outfit that did it last time.
So one of my concerns, in addition to some questions that I also had that Deb raised, is one of the things that we've been talking a lot about here is some programs that the paramedics are doing to really provide medicine and outreach to the community. So people that are recently discharged from the hospital receive follow-up treatments. And so this is a thing that we see happening in this town, and something that is certainly in line with the reality of the time that we find ourselves in. And so my point in bringing this up is that this, to me, means that the EMS facilities will be of paramount importance as these individuals are taking more of a leadership role in the community and keeping people safe and keeping people healthy. So my concern is to build a robust EMS center that will foster excellence in this division, in this endeavor. And so my second point, or my second part, is as a member of the community, I just want to make sure that we all understand what the hospital is very important to us here in town. We rely on the emergency room particularly, and we don't want that to be compromised. However, we do understand the reality of the healthcare system, and that it is difficult to recruit physicians. So in that vein, it has become apparent that it's, for me, very difficult to get an appointment with a provider in this area, and that we're being, encouraged to go up to Warwick. The other thing that I have to ask about is the record system at South County Hospital, and the fact that it is not compatible with the other lifespan and other healthcare systems. And so when we're trying to provide coordination of care, thinking of the paramedic program, I want to make sure that we're serving the community effectively and that we understand what South County Health's plan for our area is.
Those are great points, but not in the scope of today, but maybe you can follow up in another
So
time.
yeah, that's fine. We'll bring it back to the parking. I want to ask you, Andrew, in the interim here, are you guys taking any temporary measures to help alleviate the parking issues? Can you talk about that?
I mean, we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years, really, to redesign the parking configurations, within the area that's applicable, available to us, so that it's the most efficient flow of parking possible. We've increased enforcement of our sort of internal rules, for lack of a better term, regarding where employees park, where patients are supposed to be parking, and increased enforcement on that, so that we make sure that we have, priority parking available as possible for patients. But I can't expand the size of the box without having more parking available, and that's why we're undertaking this effort to get another 0.67 acres, from the town, which is proximate to the parking lots that we have.
So Andrew, assuming this deal that we're working on is cost prohibitive to South County Health, which it may be, it may not be, are there any other measures South County Health is taking to alleviate the parking situation, or at least allow more parking?
I'm not sure what you have in mind. I mean, we're making the most of what we have available. That's really.
So there is an urgency to get this deal done, but you just don't know the cost at this point, so you don't know if you can commit. The solicitor said the due diligence period has been expanded through September 2024, which is about a month from now.
Right.
Do you think you guys will know by then whether this is something you can do?
I hope so. What Mr. Murray told me is that the preliminary schematics and estimate from Union Studios should take, I think he said 2 to 4 weeks. And this was, I think, a couple of weeks ago maybe that we decided to go this direction. I haven't had an update from him in terms of where that agency stands in their efforts to produce the schematics and the estimate. But I would hope that by the end of September, we have a good idea about whether this is going to be a go or no-go, yes.
Okay.
Is the date September 20th or 30th?
20th.
So it'll have to be by then, not the end.
Or
If we're close, we'll just extend it again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
obviously, we're not going to let that date come and go if
Yeah.
we're almost there.
right.
I think a related question is, this is not this is a complicated deal, and we get that. It's already been 8 months.
Yeah.
Given everything that you've described so far, how much further do you think you need to get it to get at least the purchase and sale completed and a closing?
I think what we need to do is have a relatively firm estimate of the cost to build a structure and a facility that's acceptable to the town. I think we will probably have that at the preliminary schematic design and estimate stage. I think that's what we need. Yes?
So you shouldn't read everything on social media and believe it. However, I did read that you've purchased another piece of property No, you're shaking your head, no. Okay, so that you don't own something else where parking could be that you don't need the DPS?
We don't own another piece of property as of today that we can put parking on, no.
Okay, so that old Kenyon office building you own?
We do not own that.
You don't own that? What am I talking about? It's the building across the street. What is it?
It's the
Well,
old
not as of
O'Neill,
today, but
It's
will
the
it
old
maybe?
what?
Doctor's O'Neill building across the
Oh,
street.
if you're talking about, I think it's 70 Kenyon, which is more or less across the street from the Sturgis building where I work, where the brick pillars are. We do own that building,
Okay.
and there's a little bit of parking back there. We've owned that for a very long time.
Yep, so that, doing something there, I'm asking this for the public and because I
Sure.
read that people believe that that would be enough parking.
No, it's not. That area was included in the parking study that was done when we did our comprehensive plan, and there was still a very significant deficit even with that included.
Okay,
I mean, you could look at demolishing that building.
Right.
That raises another host of other issues, and you don't get that many more spaces from taking that building
yeah.
down.
And then what happens, I feel like when you create parking, we heard from the neighbors in Hillcrest and all in there that you needed to adjust the lighting and that this was an issue. So I think we would just spread over into a place where people live and wouldn't like
Right,
lights in their living rooms.
right.
So in some ways, the DPS location is ideal because you're not interfering with someone's sleep or life.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I
Okay.
mean, I think we've done a lot over the past couple of years to mitigate sort of light leakage from our existing lots and areas, but you're right, that's problematic.
Right, I was on the council when neighbors came and were really upset.
Yeah.
They wanted to adjust the lights
Yeah,
and.
we've done that.
Yep, so adding parking in a more residential niche or whatever right there would be, the same issues would come up.
You'd certainly have to figure out ways to mitigate additional light impacts on neighbors, and we would do that with any additional property.
Right, but even if you could mitigate, it doesn't generate enough space, 70 Kenyon.
70 Kenyon does not. No,
Okay.
No, we already parked there.
Right,
So-
right, but there were some people who felt like use that and that would be enough, and so I just wanted it to be said.
Yeah, no,
Public.
again, that piece of property, which we own, have owned for a long time, was already included in the parking study that was part of the
Yep.
comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Have you looked at what it would take to raise the Bacon House?
No, I don't mean to laugh, it's just that building is so challenging. I don't think we've studied that, if not during my tenure, no, I don't think so. It's a very, very old building in which we have a lot of employees working right now. I guess one question would be, where would all those employees go? We don't really have space for them anywhere else in our existing buildings. But no, we haven't looked at that, as far as I'm aware, recently.
The building in the back?
It's a big old white structure.
Right, I know it.
Yeah. And that's, that sort of backs up against a number of lots on the street that runs in the other direction behind our campus.
I just figured there's lights
Yeah.
there already.
Yeah, true.
How many employees are there?
I don't want to give you an exact number, but we have finance there, we have billing there, we have coding in that building, we have employee health in there. It's quite a few.
Do you know how many square feet you're occupying there? Because I don't think it's the whole building you're occupying. I could be wrong.
I think we're occupying all of the building. I don't know how many square feet that building is. I think it's 3 floors, at least. Yeah,
I thought you were only on the middle floor.
I don't believe so.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank
You're
you for your
welcome.
time.
Yeah,
We
sure.
look forward to hearing how things are going in about a month from now,
Fingers crossed.
and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. All right, that's going to conclude our work session. We're now going to go right into the regular session tonight, which is Regularly scheduled town council meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, August 13th. It's a little after 7:30. First order of business, as always, pledge of allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee,
Here.
Council Vice President Marin,
Here.
Council Member Bergner,
Here.
Council Member Alley,
Here.
Council Member Sweet. All members are present.
Thank you. All right, that's going to bring us to item 5, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve items 5A, B, and C.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 6, the consent agenda.
6A and B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Council President, we're going to move the...
It's all right. We'll take that
Okay.
new business.
All right.
It's going to move us now to item 7, licenses. A is a resolution granting a victualling license to Antonio's SK Inc., doing business as Antonio's by the Slice of Kingstown Road, Wakefield. Application by Statimus Reeves. Mr. Reeves, if you are here, I invite you to come on up. Oh, sorry about that.
Hello. I'm Paulina Reeves. Steve wasn't able to be here today because he's out of the country.
Okay. So I think we have an idea what's happening, but you want to fill us in what's going on? We're all familiar with the business, but it looks like it's changing hands here, but go ahead, fill us in.
We're just transferring the liquor license. Same family, same business, just a different name.
All right. How's business so far? Good?
It's very good, thank
All right.
God. Yes.
Opportunity to market here on the mic if you want.
What's that?
Favorite slices?
I should have brought some
anything?
pizza in for you guys. I'm sorry.
Loaded potato pizza is my favorite.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. That's one of my favorites too.
It's so good.
Thank you.
All right, Mike Arcillo, is this item related to the transfer of the liquor license such that we need the public hearing first before we approve this one?
No, the vigilante license is totally separate.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion on this?
Motion to approve item 7A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we're going to move to item 8, public hearing. A is a public hearing relative to an application for transfer of a license to keep and sell alcoholic beverages in South Kingstown in accordance with the general laws of 1956 as amended as follows. Class B victular liquor license, transfer of a Class B victular liquor license from JSR Co. Company doing business as Tony's Pizzeria of Kingstown Road, Wakefield by John Reeves, President, to Antonio's SK Inc., doing business as Antonio's by the Slice of Kingstown Road, Wakefield by Statimus Reeves, President, for the dining and counter areas in accordance with special exceptions granted by the Zoning Board of Review on August 20, 1980 and December 18, 1991, and as further defined in a site plan on file in the town clerk's office. Said transfer is contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, filing of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes and user fees and arrears to the town, the correction of any fire code violations, and the satisfaction of all claims. All right, we already have an idea what this is about, but this is a public hearing, so we do have to open it up for anyone to comment who wishes to comment on it. So, anyone who's in the audience, if you want to come up and discuss or comment on this item specifically, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, first come, first serve. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Council President Rory, I would like to just note that an objection to transfer was filed yesterday afternoon, very last minute, and the applicant is aware.
Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor to close the public hearing?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 8A?
So what do we do with the information that Nicole just provided?
The motion handles it. It says, subject to satisfaction of all claims. And by the way, this is typical in any transfer because all the liquor bills just aren't paid as of the night of the hearing. That bill will have to be paid before the clerk's office can issue the license, just like all the other conditions have to be met.
So it's not an objection to the transfer per se, it's a claim on the
To
business.
claim on the business, yeah.
And to have it be a claim on the new business name.
Right. And the statute requires that these claims be made.
And you're familiar with all this?
It was just brought to my attention before I came in. It's just an account manager not making a payment on time, or maybe she did already, we don't know yet. I'll find out tomorrow, but either way, it'll be rectified tomorrow.
Yeah, and most of these claims are paid out at the actual closing, gets subtracted from the proceeds. Yeah.
So Mike, legally, the license cannot transfer unless those outstanding claims are satisfied?
That is correct, and that's what your motion says. The last clause says the satisfaction of all claims. That's a condition precedent to the clerk issuing the license transfer.
All right.
And you do that all the time. This is not...
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've also, at least in my time on the council, we haven't had this particular issue.
Oh, no, we have. Oh, yes, we
Where
have
there were
many
objective
times.
claims?
I'd say almost every time this comes out, not just in South Kingston, it's everywhere, because it's literally impossible to have every bill paid. And because there's a Rhode Island statute that says unless you make the claim, you give it up, any creditor is forced to file it.
Okay.
So I think this is really easy, and I motion to approve item 8A.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to bring us to item B, a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to police standing orders. Chief Moynihan, come on up.
Good evening, council members. So as we've discussed before, we have 4 standing orders that we're looking to change. One, actually, we're looking to rescind batons. We no longer carry the batons, so we'll be looking to rescind that standing order. Most of the changes that are noted are cleaning up language. I can go through each one as we walk through, if you'd like. Basically, the first is the lethal and less lethal force. There's some changes just more in the format of that document, where we included the chokeholds and the neck restraints. They were already defined within the definition. We combined them into the same section. Under procedures, just documentation of issuance of shotguns and how that would proceed. So a lot of the changes going through, it's more of just fine-tuning our existing policies, but as we talked before, the standing orders, we have to come before the council. We can't just make these changes. And then, so if you had any questions with that, I could answer them as far as the first policy, and we could walk through each one.
What is the policy for chokeholds and?
They're prohibited. We don't have those.
You can't use them.
Correct.
Okay.
And they were already defined within the policy that was already in existence. This isn't anything new. It's just that it was defined in 2 separate areas within the existing policy.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for the chief?
Not a question for the chief, but for Mike. Remind me, Mike, why this comes in front of the council at all?
Because your charter requires that any change, this is the charter, it's not the ordinance, requires you to adopt an ordinance relative to police rules and regulations. It's an extremely rare situation, and the only way around it, though, someday is if we have a charter change.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
Do you want to go through each?
Maybe
each
just a brief
policy?
summary of what they entail?
Yeah, so that was basically the first one, the lethal, less lethal force. Second one is just our OC spray and changing the language in there from use of force to now it's called response to resistance, so the forms that we do there. As I said, the baton, we are going to rescind that standing order. We no longer issue the baton or carry that as part of our duty wear. Weapons and caliber ammunition, really just cleaning up again the language in there, talking about what type of weapons off duty that can be carried, the use of personal rifles that can be carried while on duty as long as they are qualified and approved by myself, and that's all documented within it. It goes down omitting the baton within that policy where it's messaged. Let's see. Clarifying the ammunition that's used, that it has to be commercially manufactured. And then I think the last one is the uniform standards. So again, made some modifications to our uniforms, introduced a Class C uniform, where it's a polo shirt mainly worn by our detective personnel, and kind of instituted that within the policy, as well as reflective vests during traffic details, grooming standards, jewelry and tattoo policies, mainly just cleaning up a lot of the verbiage and the language within the existing policies.
All right.
So I think the polo shirts are nice. I know the Providence officers wear them because my brother is one, and they're way cooler. So I think they would be great.
Great. Thanks.
Any questions for the chief? All right. This is a public hearing again, so if anyone wants to speak on this item specifically, I invite you to come on up. Again, we'll try to limit you to 5 minutes, and all we ask that you introduce yourself. With that, first come, first serve. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on item 8B?
Motion to approve item 8B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Chief.
Great, thank you.
It's going to bring us now to new business. A is a resolution adopting a citation recognizing John Beafor for his service to the South Kingstown Recreation Commission. John couldn't make it tonight, but we do have a citation recognizing him for his 17 years of service. Do I hear a motion here?
Motion to have the town clerk and town staff send the resolution to John Beafor. I know we thanked him over a year ago for his service, but thanks again, John.
All right, we have a motion
Second.
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B. Terry Murphy, come on up.
Good evening. As the council is aware, the lease for Hansens Pub, DBA 210 Oyster Bar, was up for a potential 5-year extension of the lease that ended on May 31st. The business came to the manager and requested of the council consideration of a longer-term lease, rather to start a new 15-year lease for a longer term. The recommendation is to go with that lease. The council has discussed this item, and it reflects the original lease in terms of the annual escalators for the entirety of the 15 years. I will point out, there's just, of note is a stipulation regarding the care and maintenance of the grounds has been added to Section 25 and the exterior of the building to ensure that the outside stays maintained and looking like we'd like to see the rest of the area look as well. So that is what the recommendation is. It runs through 2039, I believe, and that's a 15-year term. The 5-year option would be under negotiation. If they were to request the 5-year option, that would come back to the council for negotiation.
All right, thank you, Terry. Any questions? Go ahead.
This is a question for Jim and Mike. We did talk about this in executive session. Is there any concern about discussing their planned enlargement of the kitchen area or any of the just logistical items? So the public
No.
would know?
Not at all.
So when we met in executive session, we heard that they need to, the fire was in the kitchen area and they want to expand the kitchen area only. There isn't going to be additional dining people added, I think, and they're
Just a bathroom.
and then, yes, and then they're going to build an accessible bathroom, which didn't exist before. So that's the accounting for the increase in square footage?
Yes, there was approximately 572 square feet addition that was requested for the expansion of the kitchen and for an ADA compliant bathroom.
Right.
So I think we rounded up to 600 square feet.
And it doesn't include any more patrons, so it didn't have to go back to zoning and then back to you. So the number of people stays exactly the same.
It's just not going to be as crowded in that area.
Yeah,
there.
we have a little more room, the hallway.
Yeah, that,
And that received a positive recommendation from the Waterfront Advisory Commission, is that correct, at their meeting?
I don't know.
I think that is correct, right?
The Waterfront Advisory Commission met in July. Their formal minutes have not come out from that meeting, but it is my understanding that they had no objections to the proposal. But those
Excellent.
minutes have not been passed formally, which they will be at the next Waterfront Commission.
Okay, but those meetings are held publicly,
Yeah.
and at that time, they had a positive outlook and approved whatever improvements 210 was making at their location there. Is that fair to say?
I would say that I don't have the details of that conversation. I just know that overall, the Waterfront Advisory Commission did not object to the proposed improvements.
Okay.
So I want to go back because people have lots of questions and we did talk in the session. Do you want to talk about how you calculated the lease? Because remember we talked a little bit about they're paying much more. You know, you did a study of the rents and then do you remember?
Sure. Just
Can you
in
talk
terms of a rationale for
Yes.
the lease agreement and the annual lease costs, 210 Oyster Bar in the market rent survey was basically compared to inland leases by the firm who did the survey, which showed that it was actually paying more than what the comparables were, but those comparables were inland leases, not waterfront leases. And if there were questions arising from the square footage cost, that is basically the rationale, is that this is a waterfront property. It's a desirable lease property. There is also parking that is shared parking, and that parking for the restaurant is of great value as well in terms of the May to Columbus Day months. So that came into consideration as well in terms of the recommendation for and the council's discussion of how the lease costs should play out over 15 years.
All right, go ahead.
A couple more points to make for purposes of context so that the public understands how the council got to this point. Aside from the damage that was done in the fire several months ago, and the tenant working on renovations and this being incorporated into it, they've continued to pay rent And in order to do financing, as I understand it, having a long-term lease makes a difference with financial institutions.
Yeah, typically, that is the case. So rather than opting for the 5-year extension, they requested the long-term lease.
Yeah, all of those components and the other things that have been mentioned was part of my coming along, that this is a good opportunity.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve item 9B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Terry. We have another item here. Item C is for you as well.
Yes, this is a recommendation to award a contract for a geotechnical report for the Old Mountain Field project. It is recommended that GZA, Geo-Environmental, be awarded this work, which involves basically investigating the ground on the site where the construction is proposed for the Phase 1 work for the Old Mountain Field project. Borings will be done, geoprobes, all to get a sense of what they're working with in terms of the ground and how they would move forward with plans and specifications for the concession and restroom building and the associated seating around that area. That is the recommendation. We're recommending GZA be awarded the contract for a total of $19,280. That includes a $3,000 contingency. And this would then go to the architect and engineering firm that would use this to develop the specifications. And as you know, we are looking to try to keep this project moving along.
All right, thank you, Terry. Any questions?
Yeah, the 19,000 is already allocated.
There's a budget in the capital improvement reserve for Old Mountain Field that has a current fund balance of $625,000. Correct, it's coming out of the capital fund.
Motion to approve item 9C.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to know, I don't really know what geotechnical services are. That's all.
So it basically is an assessment and evaluation of the ground. For instance, Old Mountain Field has been known to have a lot of ledge in the area. And I'm not an engineer.
Right.
And I don't profess to be, so if you want more detail.
No, I just wanted a general idea of what it was.
Yeah,
that's
so they'll
all.
excavate, borings go down quite
Right.
deep.
And you see
Geoprobes
like
are
how
little-
much slate there is and all kinds of stuff?
Correct, and they analyze the soil so that they know how to proceed with the design.
Okay, great.
Can you tell us, Terry, how this impacts the timetable for the project?
Well, we are hoping to be able to have this work done within the next month, which will then be provided to Beta Group so that they can develop the bid specs and the architectural design for the actual building to be able to get it out to bid. We're shooting for before the end of the year, so November timeframe, because we are very interested in seeing this project move forward and be able to hopefully utilize and commit some of the rescue plan dollars that may or may not be available at that time.
I'm not going to hold you to a specific date, but can you give us a target for breaking ground?
I really, that would be probably something after the new year. So as long as the contract is in place and the funds are committed for the work, I can't imagine that it would be breaking ground before the end of the year, quite honestly.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Chief Stanley, come on up.
Good evening, Council. Chief Stanley, South Kingston EMS.
Before us, we have a recommendation for award to purchase 2 ambulances. The question is, why are we purchasing 2? The industry of acquiring ambulances and having them built has been significant challenges since 2020 due to COVID. Normal build times for ambulances in the industry was anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Typically, they would be delivered within 4 months. Since then, the standard is now 2 to 3 years. In addition to that, the cost has gone up. The vehicle that we purchased in 2019, we paid $249. That same vehicle that's going to be delivered in May is $360. So with that, with our aging fleet, we're running more calls, more wear and tear in the vehicles. I was able to do some research and find a vendor that had stock vehicles that will be delivered in December. Other vendors and are looking around the country, their delivery times are this summer, next year, and the prices are a lot more. So I looked at moving to a more, what's called a stock vehicle as opposed to custom. I researched some other departments that have purchased them. They've been very happy with those. It'll meet our needs, and it will definitely help us. And we get the vehicles sooner, and then we can put the vehicles we currently have now into reserve, because we've spent quite a bit of money repairing those, waiting on our new vehicle to get in. And the other part of this is also the cost of this will come from EMS revenue. It won't affect the budget. Our normal EMS revenue that we bring in will cover this, so it will not have an impact on the budget.
So I don't know if anyone had a chance to read right there about the funding for this. Greg, you love these funds, ready? So the creation of the resident self-insured fund assures that citizens will not be double taxed. The EMS revenue fund has $2.1 million in it as of June 30th, 2024, with $1 million budgeted to be transferred in support of the general fund for fiscal year 2025. The total cost for the ambulances and necessary equipment would be $753,000, $18,000. So
So are you touting it or are you questioning it?
I'm thinking that we often have a lot of reserve funds for all different little things, and Greg often says there's we talk about a lot of buckets of money, and this is another one that's interesting that we have plenty of money for, and just sitting there. And we think about the EMS project and other projects. I totally agree that we should buy it, but there's just a lot of reserve funds for all these different things that we don't keep, that are hard to juggle and keep track of. Just a note.
All right. Any questions for Chief Stanley on this matter before us?
Do you have plans for the other $1 million that is going to be left over?
I will. No, not right. I can.
Well, we do need future ambulances at the new station,
Yeah,
right, Jim?
At this time, I don't. I mean, we're just concentrating on this, so I have not discussed.
So this is a positive thing, that we knew the money was there, we knew what we needed, and we weren't spending frivolously. We needed one rescue. The decision was made, since we have that money, by 2, because it's going to take so long to get there. We just received a recommendation from Senator Reed's office for another rescue vehicle up to $425,000 that will be provided on a grant for the new station. So these funds that we have, there's not a lot of these funds that I'm aware of, but this fund in particular is like the reimbursement that comes when someone's transported, like the insurance reimburses the town on a portion. So we've designated that's where the money is. Whenever we need equipment, we'll go to that right away, which we're demonstrating we've spent 1/3 of it already. And so to answer your question direct, the one that will go to the new station when it's built will be covered by a federal grant, and any other major purchases that EMS will need, which they will when we hire additional people and we have to outfit them, I'm sure those funds will come from the same fund that we have here.
Just a note, I know what you're up against. When we order our vans, the special colors, and we ordered one in December, I think, and we just canceled the order because there's none in the pipeline.
Yeah, the one we have now is due in May of 25, 2 years, and now they're telling us now it's up to 3 years. So I plan on these vehicles The next go-around is to refurb these. We'll buy a new chassis, take the box, and put that on. So I could possibly get 10 years out of that vehicle. My previous department in Atlanta is doing it with 20. They got to replace 20 ambulances. I think certainly that is just not feasible. So they're refurbing that. So that's where agencies, I think, are going to have to go to save money and get the vehicles quicker.
Are they aluminum bodies, the boxes?
Yes, yeah. And the reason I'm being told from the manufacturers, the vendors, is just they don't have the staff. The supply chain isn't so much the issue, they just don't have the staff to keep the production.
All right. Your motion?
Motion to approve item 9D.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Chief Stanley. Chief Moynihan, come on up.
Good evening. This is a recommendation for the approval of a contract for Cox Business for the replacement of the telephone lines at the Public Safety Building. So the phones have been there since 2013, starting to have difficulty with the upkeep and the maintenance of them. This would be transitioning it over to a new advanced system, a voice over internet protocol. And that will allow better security for us. They're more reliable with backup when, our current system, if the phones went down due to storms and things, with the voice over internet protocol, we'll be able to use other backups. So there'll be less downtime. And there's more flexibility with it as far as expanding upon it. We're not necessarily installing a system, and that's just how it will be for years. We can build upon it and really customize it to our needs within the department. It's a cost-effective because it's a pay-as-you-go system as opposed to putting the money all out up front. We do have funding for this. This was a CIP project that went, and we've structured the payments over a 3-year period. We'll be working with finance with that. So, Cox really working with us to meet the needs, and if this is approved, we'd start implementing and making these changes immediately within the department.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
Motion to approve 9E.
Second?
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank
Great.
you, Chief.
Thank you.
Rich Bourbonnais, come on up.
Good evening. Item F is our bid recommendation for our municipal tree service that we perform each year. These are the non-emergency removal, and as from the bids received. Oh my gosh! You know what? I don't have it in front of me right here.
Stanley Tree, Northeastern Tree, Regal Tree?
Regal? Yeah, it was Regal. So, Regal Tree Service came in with a better bid at $36,000. Something I wanted to point out with this, though, that I thought was important to note, that, in the past, we've put out tree removal with stump removal, and we also included an extra section that was just stump removal. So some of the emergency removals, the stumps would still be there, but we're doing those on our own now because we received recently an approval from you all for the stump grinder. So next year, what we're hoping to do is once we get more familiar with the stump grinder, maybe next year it's simply tree removal, and then we'll require that it's put to a certain level, and then we'll be doing those stumps ourselves. So I just wanted to point that out. It was brought up in the finance department as well, but I had already kind of fleshed that out. So, and that's what we like to do with Regal for this.
All right. Any questions for Rich on this one?
Approve item 9EF, sorry.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
All right, thank you. The next one is Verizon. You've seen a number of these. This is for the moving of the equipment to a railing, but this is for Pawtucket. Verizon seems to be the most on cue on this. They're coming forward with everything they need. They're doing it all up front, which is real nice. But this is the same thing that you saw over on Victoria, but this is for Pawtucket. And it's an agreement to move the equipment. That's it.
All right. Any questions for Rich on this one? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 9G.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
And
I'm sorry. Last one here, Rich. What we got?
Item H was a little bit of a misstep on my part. I was here last month on the 22nd, and I requested that we backdate on to June 1st to July 1st for the septage hauler fees rate. But, after I spoke with two haulers, and, both said the same thing. Listen, we already hauled for July, and we already billed for July, and I get it. So what I'd like to do is just make it effective September 1st, I believe, is what I asked for in here. And that way, they'll get their July, August, everything's the same, and then they go to September 1st. The only way to do this is to come back and get it revised. It's the only way to do this. And it doesn't have a big effect on our
Revenue.
So, Rich, what did you do in the interim when between the last meeting and this meeting, the fees that we adopted at the last meeting were retroactive July 1? How was that handled? Meaning, how was it billed?
Well, so we haven't billed them.
Okay.
So this is the way it works, is they haul all month long, and then at the end of the month, they get a bill. So what we did, we held off on that July bill to fix this. So they haven't been billed for their July hauling, but they were already hauling for August by the time this was really kind of coming about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
So you were sort of alluding to there's not a large impact to the fee discrepancy. Can you guesstimate what that might be?
I estimated that it was in approximately 2,000, in around that range. Remember, this is $5 per 1,000 gallons. Mm-hmm. So that was the discrepancy. So it wasn't.
Okay.
And we won't see it. Chances are we're not going to see an increase next year. So it's really for 22 months instead of 24.
Okay. Thank you.
So I apologize, by the way. I apologize to them. I apologize in this case as well.
No worries.
All right.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 9H.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. That passes.
Right.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
All right. It's going to move us now to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Council President. First item on this report, and it's very applicable, is we want to congratulate Craig Stanley, the Chief of Emergency Medical Services, on receiving the EMS First Responder of the Year award from the Crisis Intervention Team of Rhode Island. So what is the Crisis Intervention Team? It is a community partnership that includes members of law enforcement, EMS, mental health, and substance use disorder professionals, people who live with mental illness and/or substance use disorder, their families, and other people dedicated to improving the community responses to mental health crises. So there were 57 first responders that were nominated for this, and our own Craig received the #1 award. So Craig, so he's going to be, they're going to honor him on August 20th as the EMS First Responder of the Year award in Newport. He's the first paramedic to attend and certify in this CIT program. Like I said, there were 57 nominations. Some of the terms that the people that nominated him were included the following. He's a statewide leader on divergent to best clinical settings. He's a champion for EMS and a true example of best practices. They praised him for his leadership in implementing the paramedicine program. I've gotten to know Craig personally for the past 2.5 years. He's a true professional, along with the other 20 people that he supervises. He's a leader. He's like a cheerleader to them. He responds as well as them. And it doesn't surprise me that he's getting such an honor. They went on 4,100 calls last year, our EMS. A lot of people don't know what they do, except when they hear the sirens and they think they're going somewhere. But just yesterday is a perfect example of EMS, South Kingston Police, and the Unified District went to an extremely difficult call where a 12-year-old died here in town, and they all worked valiantly to try and save this young lady. So we all should be very thankful for all our first responders and EMS. You know, I'm very proud of Craig and his team, and the chief and his team, police officers, and our Unified District, which people think is separate from the town, but it's really not. We all work together. So Craig, why don't you come up, just tell us a little bit about this award that you're getting, and congratulations.
Thank you, Jim. I was completely surprised by this. Didn't see it coming or even a conscious thought. I'm very grateful. I have an amazing team. This award isn't just about me. It's about the people that we have that serve day in and day out, that serve the community. So I was very honored, very humbled. I think this is the first award I've received in my 38 careers for doing something. I've received awards for valor and calls, so it's very much appreciative, but it's based on my team and the great work that they do. And the support. I can't do my job with the support of you all, the town manager.
Great work, Craig. You set the bar high. We got your back. Let's try to achieve it every year now. You and your department are getting it done.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Congrats.
Second item on the town manager's report is an update on the school building committee and the school facilities project, which we do every meeting to keep full transparency to the town on what this bond is and what we're doing and where we're going. So the next meeting that the school building committee has is August 22nd, 8:30 a.m. here in the council chamber. And the project that that is next up on deck that the school building committee is authorized and the school committee is paying for and authorized as well is an 800-foot well being dug on the property where the high school is currently in that field to see if geothermal is a viable option for the new high school. So the well's about 800 feet deep, which I stated will take several days to dig. The cost will be about $100,000 to $125,000. That's what's budgeted. And the school committee, which I believe is meeting tonight, is discussing that, but they are paying that for that project. So that's the newest update I have. Item C is a report on healthcare management funds, which was brought up by Councilmember Bergner, a request on how these funds are allocated. And Brian Sylvia, our finance director, is here tonight to discuss and explain that.
Good evening. Just as a little backup, this came about at the last meeting when I was before you to get the OPEB valuation contract awarded. This fund was the funding source, and that was brought up some questions regarding it. So, and I referenced at that time the audited number from 2013, the last audited number, which was $668,937. Just to dive into that a little further, of the healthcare management fund, of that amount, rather, $80,420 is associated with town assets, and the school balance is $588,517. Backing it up, that's just, I wanted to give you a little more detail on that number, but to back up to the origin of that, this is from when the town exited West Bay Collaborative and moved over to the Trust for Healthcare. That was in 2018. At the time, the town had a balance of approximately $884,000. The town right away in fiscal year 18 contributed made a one-time contribution to the OPEB trust with the their OPEB trust with the trust. of $800,000. And that's where you got our amount down to, it was down to $84,000 now, and now it's about $80,000. The schools in August, so in FY19, that was reflective in FY19, they made a recommendation, they had $1.5 million left on their surplus from leaving West Bay. They had a recommendation, and I apologize, it's before my time, I don't know the names. Miss Crawford made a recommendation to move $1.2 million to the OPEB trust, and the committee elected instead to move $1 million. So they moved $1 million of their $1.5 million surplus from West Bay to the OPEB trust, leaving a balance of about $500,000 approximately, and that's where they're at, $588,000. All that's really happened since 2019, that expense to the that OPEB trust, all that's really happened since then is the annual contributions to NIHART to fund our OPEB our actuarial reports and interest that we earn on these funds.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
I have, I should mention that too, I have brought these funds up to my counterpart with the school department, Ryan, and because I don't think he was aware of these funds either, he's obviously new. So he's looking into that as well on what can be done.
So what's the balance as of right now? Or as of the latest audit?
I should say that too. So as of unaudited, but for fiscal year '24, changed slightly. We're projecting unaudited, the balance would be $682,000. Of that, $81,410 would be associated with the town, and $601,494 would be the school department.
And how much is it for the actuarial expenses each year?
It varies, because we do a full report and then we do a midterm. So the full report is typically around $10,000. The interim is about $2,000-3,000.
So about $12K total per year for the actuarial services?
Oh, well, no, 1 year would be about $10,000, the next year would be $2,000 or $3,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's, yeah.
All right, so these balances just sort of sit there and accrue interest, earns interest.
Yeah, the towns has gone down slightly. I mean, when we started, it was up at 86, and now we're at 81,000. We're not getting much interest on that, and we have the expenses. But yeah, the schools have grown from 586,000 to 601 because of the interest they're getting on it.
Do the amount we receive in interest exceed the amounts we expend toward the actuarial services on an annual basis?
On the interim years, the less expensive evaluations, yes.
So it tends to stay around the same.
Yeah, it'll go down when we do the full report, and then it'll go back up a little bit on the interim years, yes.
Does it make sense financially, prudent-wise, to just keep this balance there and not sort of touch it?
The town has 80,000, so I mean, I'm not sure what restrictions, and I'd like to talk to Mike a little more on that, what we have on this. But again, we have 80,000. The only thing I would caution with the 80,000, if that's pulled, we would then have to budget for that annually, that annual expense. Right now, we're not budgeting for that because we're paying for it out of this fund.
Okay, so the fund like self-sufficiently replenishes based on interest, so it never needs to hit the operating budget?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you. So what are some uses for that? It's not, I know it's 80,000, but what could the school committee use that for as well?
Typically, it would be healthcare related, and that's where I'm not sure the origins of this. Again, this goes back, but it being healthcare funds and surplus from the healthcare operations, I'm not sure what. If there is any stipulations to the funds, I'm not sure on that at this time.
Once you've had a chance.
The question that and this actually came from the prior school business manager when I raised this point to her.
Raquel?
Yes, correct. Her comment or concern when we discussed these funds was that, again, this is a surplus that the town received on these funds. These funds were contributed to West Bay, both town and employees, as part of the healthcare plan. So these funds, in some form, are town and employee contributions back, as it's a surplus. So that's again what Raquel had explained to me. I haven't gone further with that yet.
That would also raise the question, you mentioned earlier about talking with Mike about restrictions on the use of those funds. It seems to me that there's also a question from what you just said as to whether or not there's an obligation to the employees.
Well, that's why right now it's only been used for the OPEB valuations, which are required, and it was used as the one-time contributions to the OPEB trust, again, benefiting.
Yeah, I'll certainly look into this with Brian. And, just thinking out loud, maybe some of those funds could be used for future OPEB contributions because they would be used for exactly. So let me have the opportunity to look at it with Brian, and we'll update you again at a future meeting.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for talking about those funds again. I appreciate it. I don't think people always understand why we raise the questions that we do, because, ultimately, the money that we tax people and ask for our residents to pay, we could be more efficient or mindful. So it's important to really talk about that and then to remember it 6 months from now in budget season. Thank you.
Jim, go ahead.
Last item on the town manager's report, 10D. At the last meeting, a question came up about North Kingstown's access to their beach. Would we be able to duplicate what they have? The question came up about a mechanized, it was like a wheelchair access mechanized vehicle that could, it was my understanding, just transport down to the beach, but really what North Kingston had is it could transport into the water. And also, what are our access points with a mat that could be used to gain access for people that have some ADA issues onto the beach? So Terry Murphy did some research on it. She looked into it, and she's here to give the council an update on that.
Thank you. Just a little background on the town beach and over the years what has transpired for us to be more ADA friendly. Back in 2016, this is a couple years after the pavilion had been relocated. At one point, the pavilion was actually a very accessible point where folks in wheelchairs who had some mobility issues could actually go up on the pavilion. There was a seating area that had a lovely view of the ocean. Of course, now we don't have that because we were forced to move the pavilion back. A couple of years after that, we heard the community in terms of shade structures and accessibility to the beach. Once that section of the pavilion was removed, it had shading on it. We heard the public. There are shade structures now that have been installed on the beach, and there were mats that were also purchased and installed back in 2016 for accessibility down to the shore or to the beach, particularly across the main area of the beach, right in front of the shade structures. We had those for several years until last year when they were vandalized. There was actually a fire that was set through fireworks or what have you. So we did not have those mats to install this year. In the meantime, we see that North Kingstown, well, let me back up a bit. We also have a beach wheelchair, a beach accessible wheelchair, not water accessible. It's got the large plastic wheels. It is out for any beach patron to utilize. Typically, we will have maybe a couple times a week, we'll have somebody come and need to get a parent or a child or somebody that needs assistance onto the beach, be able to go up to the pavilion. It's right there. All they have to do is ask the beach managers. They're allowed to use it. They bring their loved one down to the beach area. They transfer them out of the wheelchair so that the wheelchair can then be used again. They'll come back up when they're done with their visit, take their loved one off the beach. We still have that. It gets used fairly regularly, a few times a week, which is helpful. What we don't have is the mats. And with regard to the wonderful system that North Kingstown has, which really is great in terms of the chair itself being water accessible, It's not recommended for Matunic because of the surf, the drop-off. It's just not ideal for an open surf beach, whereas North Kingstown has they're on the bay, it's very calm. But I talked to the trust about it. The interlocal trust does not recommend it for Matunic. I think Narragansett, they had mentioned that Narragansett had looked at it a couple of years ago and also were advised against that type of chair. But I did speak with the director of Parks and Recreation in North Kingstown to get some information on the type of mat system that they have, which is called MobiMat. We have looked into that. We've actually purchased 2 sections to try it. One of the challenges we ran into with the original mat system we had was our beach is not nice and level and flat, and we know after this past spring, it changes every year. So it's a little bit steeper. The mat over time can become a trip hazard, so our staff has to go out and reposition it. That's okay, we've done that before, but hoping that this system has evolved a little bit, the system that North Kingstown is using, and we are going to try those mats, at least the 2 small sections that we purchased, to see how they will work, and if they can stay in place, and if they're good, then we will look at larger portions to be able to equip the beach for more than one access point. That's where we're at. We do have in excess of the number of handicap parking spaces than what we are required to have by code. The whole first half of the parking lot closest to the beach is handicap parking. Our staff is very welcoming and open. We've had patrons who will call in advance to make sure that we have a wheelchair. Potentially could purchase another wheelchair in the future as well. So that's where we stand.
All right, thank you, Terry.
Any questions?
Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
That's
So-
it? Yes.
So I did have last meeting a few things that I had hoped that we would talk about, and specifically there's questions about the high school land swap. Exactly, if you could give us an update about where we're at with that part of the project in terms of the school building committee. You did mention, we did talk about in the work session, the land swap with South County Hospital. I also asked about an update about the EMS sale, the parcel on Ministerial Road, where we're at with that. Do you have any updates on that and the land swap?
When you talked about the EMS, I thought you meant the DPS building and the EMS building.
No, it was the purchase and sales with the land trust. Where are we at with that? Can you answer that, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
That happened. That has happened. What we're waiting to do now that DEM has approved the on-site wastewater, septic system, et cetera, planning is in the process of parceling out the area that's going to be deeded back to the land trust for them to use based upon what we're going to need now to put up our building and all of the space that we'll need to make that viable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's now back in planning, and we will in fact get to a point soon when, but we own the property.
We have closed.
Right, we've closed.
Okay. And so we did see some renderings last year at this time from Union Studios.
Yes, so we've been working on those renderings. As you can imagine, the costs are skyrocketed. We've already addressed that tonight, but we're in a fortunate position that we have $1 million in opera money that was dedicated by the council for the building of this building, and we received a $1 million grant as well, which will go towards it, which should cover our the cost of building this new EMS facility in Perryville. And I have looked at the renderings. We've scaled them down a little bit to make it more cost efficient, and so that the $2 million is sufficient for what we need. And we're at the point now where we'll start showing these new renderings and moving on from there. But we're out moving forward with it, and you know, we're hoping that we can break ground with it in the near future anyway.
So when do you think we might see something, and when do you, like, I would obviously think 2025 before the project gets underway, but when do you think the community might see the different drawings?
Once we get the revised ones back from
Okay.
Union Studios, we'll put them out there, because once again, we did revise them. We're going over, we had meetings with them going over siding and what's the most cost-effective way to build this. That we had storage tanks that we cut out that we did not need, so forth, which added a lot of money to this. Now we're talking about generators and colors and siding and so forth. So I would say in the near future, within the next month or so, we should have these revised renderings back and we can share it.
Okay.
And then once again, 2025 is the year that we're looking to start building this thing.
Okay. In the high school, the swapping of the land
Yep.
is always a topic in the community that people wonder about, so that's why
Luke,
I had
can you,
asked.
yeah, so Luke and I have been talking about this, and we can, he's been handling that project. It's very complex,
I
very
know.
detailed, so he's been working close on this, and he can brief you on it now.
So we have been working on the swap documents. We actually had an intern here, he was very helpful. He's a URI intern. And one of the tasks that I delegated to him was to work on the application. He's filled out all the components. We expect actually to come back to the council in September to have a work session with you specifically to the land swap, which is a requirement of the application process. That what they want to do is make sure, as far as social equity and justice, making sure that we're not swapping for some parcel that's, let's say, in West Kingston for something that's maybe more urban. So that's a kind of a check the box on the application process. Once we're through that, at the same time, we're getting estimate on an appraisal. We have to have an appraisal done of the property. The good part is we only need one. It has to be reviewed. I don't know if you remember, but there was, as part of our process of the swap for Green Hill and the whole South County Hospital parcel, we had to get appraisals, had to have those reviewed, and those have to be submitted. Same process applies here. So we're well underway. It's going to take a few more months. I expect by, let's say, 3 months, we should have everything ready to submit to NPS. In the meantime, I've been in constant communications with Paul Jordan at DEM and Megan Dupree. They've assured me they don't have any concerns about the swap, that it should be a matter of process. They've already reached out to NPS. NPS has given clear indications that it should be a process that's more of a procedural, not of concern. We're not the only school district or town that's undertaking this venture. 4 or 5 other districts, and I believe I've communicated this previously to the council and others, other towns are doing this as part of the school project. This is not an isolated issue in the state, so they're aware of it and they're working with other districts on these swaps.
Go ahead.
You said Paul's been in touch with MPS? What's that?
And NPS, National Park Service.
National Park
sorry.
Service.
National Park Services manages the Land and Water Conservation Fund. DEM, just so the public understands, is the pass-through agency. So they coordinate all the documents, they submit it on to the federal government, and the federal government makes the decision.
Thank you.
Yep.
So you think it's like a few months, I wrote down 3 months to submission, so.
Correct.
So you're gonna submit it in November?
Yes.
And it could take,
We're hoping for an expedited review, given that it's a very limited, I mean, in
right, it's really just using.
truthfulness, they say it could take up to a year. I will say that the Green Hill one was done in probably 3 to 4 months, and that was more complex than this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful that will be more of on a 3-month turnaround versus that 1 year. But putting it out to the public, it could take up to a year. We've disclosed that from the beginning. We didn't want to wait too long. There's a 3-year time frame that the federal government says you have to convert the property. So once the bond went through, we started undertaking this effort because we had surety at that point we had a real project. We didn't want to jump the gun and start down this lane because it starts the clock on doing the conversion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I appreciate that.
No problem.
So I'm just curious, you think supposedly they're gonna start construction at the end of the academic year?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
10 months away, right?
Yes.
Okay, just it's crazy. It's going to go fast. Thank you. Sev?
Go ahead.
Just one thing I did want to note, that I'm kind of disappointed that Dorald isn't here tonight, because I think he would be really happy about the geothermal well, and I'm very excited about that too, that the school committee has undertaken this investigation, also that they're paying for it. That gives me a lot of continued faith in the school committee, and also just a lot of enthusiasm and excitement that maybe we could use geothermal power for our school.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
So before you go, Luke, because you could be called again, I have another topic about the facade improvement program. Do you have an update on that?
So last week we had a meeting, Jamie Rabbit, I stepped in on the meeting where it's going slower than we anticipated, but we have 5 applicants right now and we're vetting them. It's on a rolling application process rather than a drop dead date. So, and there are other businesses within town that are, that have approached me about some of the projects that they want to do. For example, Calf Bar is one of them that, you know, they want to bring their back to the historic look with windows and so forth. So we're giving people more time to do this, to get these applications in. But we also have an architect that's helping out that we contracted for up to $75,000, I believe is the number, to assist. Is that right? 10,000 to start. To assist some of these property owners with getting these applications in and getting good estimates. So it's moving forward, and we are taking it, you know, week by week, but we're making progress.
So Jim, based on sort of the limited applications.
Can I just, since this wasn't specifically listed in Jim's report, could you add this item to the manager's report?
Motion to add the facade improvement program to the agenda.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, this is added. So based on the limited applications we've been getting, it's partly, I'm guessing, because they're not able to meet the requirements that are necessary in order to get to the stage where they could even be considered for the funding. Should we pull back on some of these requirements, make it an easier access to capital here?
So we have relaxed some of the requirements, but I wouldn't say that, I think it's just taking them longer because of the, you know, architects and builders and so forth to give these estimates. It's taking forever to get them on board and getting information from them. But it is moving forward, but it's once again, that's what the holdup is getting people in the building industry to give them the estimates and products and so forth.
So we may have to extend the deadline again to sort of make sure we get the max applications we can.
We're hoping we don't have to extend it, but once again, we're vetting it now. We have at least, I think 5 came in, 3 are really on moving forward. I wish Jamie was here to go over the exact numbers, but he had to head out. But I can get more information for you and give you periodic updates.
Okay.
So would it be possible to do an update at the next meeting? I know
Yep.
this is our only meeting in August,
Yes.
but you'll have a good chunk of
September,
time.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim, when you mentioned the change to a rolling application process, so when applications come in and they're complete, they'll be decided on, and hopefully they can move forward even if
Yes.
others aren't necessarily at that point yet.
Yes, and that was the meeting last week that where there was a panel that went over all these applications that were coming in, rolling. And the people that have been applying appreciate that it's rolling now instead of a set date.
Do you have any idea how many are in that are complete?
I think we had 5 total, and 3 looked very viable at this point.
I'm just thinking when people start to see other people getting approved, it may sort of have a snowball effect.
I'm sure, and once again, I've been approached by several businesses that are interested, just trying to collect all the data they need to file the application. So, and one of them I've been working with, so that I can see where the holdup is. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
I guess that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
All right. We're now going to move to public comments, formerly known as comments from interested citizens. At this point, I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any matter whatsoever, come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we're going to limit you to 5 minutes. You can use this clock over here, which will tick down when you begin talking as a way to sort of pace yourself. But with that said, first come, first serve, come on up. Oh, there's a button on your right, should light up in red. Make sure the microphone is on.
On the black thing.
There we go, that's better, sorry. So good evening, Council President, Vice President, other members of the council, and everyone that's seated over here, I guess. My name is Thomas Edwin Northup Jr. I expected actually to be on the agenda tonight under the communications portion. But I was notified this morning that that would not be taking place. I'm a builder in this town. I've spent the majority of my life in this town. I've worked in this town. I've coached softball in this town for over 20 years. I have family in this town. So this is a particular matter that is of big interest to me. Sorry, I'm just trying to read through these notes so I make this correct here. So I reached out to the town council for some help in regards to a underground power line system for a private residence on Prospect, 126 Prospect Road here in South Kingstown, underground electric service. I was met with what I would consider to be a significant amount of resistance from the Public Services Director. Up in the beginning, I was stated that Rhode Island Energy did not allow that. I knew from prior experience on 2 private roads, Ninny-Grit and 8 Peninsula, that it was allowed by Rhode Island Energy, and I knew that it was also allowed in the town of Westerly because I have done one there. I was told that when I asked specifically if there were ordinance or laws against it, I was told no. I said so. I haven't granted one in 20 years. I'm not going to start granting them now. That was with specific statements. When I went on to press further about a denial, I was told that in order to apply, I would have to fill out this application right here, which also required my excavation company to take out an extra $400 of insurance just to get the denial letter. Now, nowhere else in the town of South Kingstown's processes am I required to achieve extra insurance before doing anything like that. Specifically, if I'd like to tear down a house, demolition permit, I apply for it, and when the town grants the application, in order for it to be in effect, I have to supply them with a check equal to the amount of the demolition, or I have to bond the insurance to cover that project. So I spent $400 just to get the denial. Now, I was told that it was a denial letter. I know that the council was provided with an email that had all these documents in it, as well as a hard copy because I delivered them. But in the denial email, they weren't denials, they were conditions. Specifically, the very first one, which addresses the email that I got this morning, I was told that the town solicitor, the town manager, told the council they do not have the legal authority to overturn this. But the number 1 list right on the top here, which is stated by Mr. Bourbonnais, Director Bourbonnais, is the town council is the only town entity that can grant an easement of town property. Those are his words. So who's right and who's wrong? Is the solicitor and the town manager wrong, or is Mr. Bourbonnais wrong? Because I requested specifically to speak about getting the easement. Number 2, if the contractor excavate the area, dig safe. Well, basically the statement of that was dig safe wouldn't recognize the underground service. Again, not true. Dig safe absolutely recognizes underground services and would locate it. Number 3, conduit in the town right away would require a concrete encasement. That doesn't sound like a denial, that sounds like a condition. And that it couldn't go over the water line. Okay, so we have to go under it. Again, a condition, not a reason for denial. does state that every electric service along Prospect Road or aerial, therefore the request for aerial connection is keeping with the neighborhood. I take definite offense to that because one of the other things Mr. Bourbonnais said is, you just want your customer to be the only one in South Kingstown allowed to do this. No, I want them to be the first. Okay? As a point of reference, I spoke to 32 other towns in the state that allow this exact activity. In every town around you, Narragansett, North Kingston, South Kingston, Exeter, Westerly, Richmond, Hopkinton, they all allow this. This is coming now at an additional cost to my customer, $5,700 to install a telephone pole for something that would have cost $1,300 for me to do it myself. So I'm asking to speak to anyone who can give me the information I want so that we can discuss this arbitrary and capricious decision.
All right, thank you for your time. The 5 minutes is up. But I'm willing to entertain to add this to the agenda just so we can talk about it a little bit, get a further understanding. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to add this item. All in favor? Aye. All right, Rich Bourbonnais, come on up. We're going to refer to Rich, Director of Public Services, Jim Manny, and Town Manager, and our Town Solicitor, Mike Arcillo, to sort of guide us on this process. This is more of a, no, you can sit in the front of it.
Thank you.
It's more of a town administrative type application, usually outside the purview of the council, but Rich, go ahead, give us some idea what's happening here.
Well, let me explain what Rhode Island Energy does with underground services. We all understand there are underground services. They are normally connected to, well, they're always connected to a, they call them planned underground residential developments. I think that's the term they use. So it's a network of underground wires and conduit for everything from communications to electricity and all of that. Similarly set up as like we would do with a gas service. So National Grid takes those plans. They're always planned developments. So it's like Vespia Lane or one of these other new developments around here. They went in with, and we require it, by the way, but they went in with a plan to National Grid. National Grid engineers it all out, and they get it back, and they install it. It's an entire neighborhood. When I'm talking about underground service, first of all, I've only been here 7 years, but when I'm talking about that I've never done it professionally, going under a road with a single service. And the reason why is because when it comes down a pole in an aerial neighborhood, where all the wires are aerial, when it comes down that pole, it is private. And the contractor installs that, not National Grid, and actually not private contractors can install the network of conduit, but in that situation, National Grid has approved that whole network. In this situation, once it comes down that pole, it is private. It goes under that road, it's private. And what I'm trying to say, and I've said a dozen times, is that I can't even approve it. I said it a dozen times. I can't approve this because I can't grant an easement across town right of way. It has to come to council. When there was a threat to be sued, I said, you know what, make an application. Make an application, then I'll deny the application, and that's what I did. So that's why it is where it's at. And our process is very simple. To be a licensed contractor to work in our town right of way, we require really two things. One is that you are insured, and all you have to do is list the town as an additional insured. We require that on every project that anybody ever does in this town. That's what we require. And we require it of contractors that are licensed in this town. The application to become a licensed contractor in this town is $25. The other thing we require is we require a $3,000 bond. So you can either provide a check for $3,000, which many of them do because it's really easier. It lasts for an entire year. The contractor in this case, I believe, was even a, I don't know what it was, but it sounded like somebody that would do all the site work for the site. So that license to be a licensed contractor in this town would be good for the entire project, to do the driveway, to do all the landscaping, all that stuff, anything that was in the road, the loam and seed. So that contractor would have been valid for that. So the application process, there's not a problem with our application process. And if he's paying $400 on a bond or whatever it was, I don't know what the bond rating is, I don't know what it is, it's not my business. Our application is $25, and the actual application for the permit is $10. So those are short dollars as far as I'm concerned when I'm just issuing a denial. And it was discussed. This was discussed 10, maybe more times. And then, when the application was made, it was made on the 29th of June. That was when the contractor made his application. I have it in our system. It's great. Viewpoint's great because we can track everything really, really well. But the application was finalized on the 29th. We issued a permit on the 30th. It sat in our office for at least 2 weeks. We called a number of times. It wasn't picked up. So I just want to be very clear that my office, and particularly my staff, acted just as we do on every application. I'm not going to issue this because I don't want an unmarked electric line. Think about this. If you do one, you're doing a lot of them, frankly, because everybody would love to have their wire come underground from across the street. We're not denying electric service, by the way. We're just saying put the pole on your side of the street. That's all we're saying. Run the wire over to that pole, then you can go underground from there. That's what we allow. That's what every town allows. I have an email from Narragansett saying we do that exactly. This is from Narragansett. It's an email, a written email. All right, so I don't know who was called. I don't know anything about that. But I'm telling you, I called around too because I was just saying, you know what, maybe I'm crazy. You know, but no, I'm not. So I don't want an electric line. This is what happens. At 3 in the morning, I'll get a call, and I'll go out to a site because a water line has broken in the street. The street's flooded. Everybody's going nuts. People lost all their water, and they start digging. And it's after we call National Grid, and we say to National Grid, what do you have in this area? And all they say is, it's all aerial. You're good to go. That's all they say, right? Unless there's gas line, then they'll come out, they'll mark the gas line. But if it's just aerial, if there's no gas lines, they say it's all aerial, you're good to go. That's what would happen on a street where we had electric lines going under the street. And there's no way in heck I'm ever going to allow guys to start digging in roads that have electric lines just zigzagging all over the street. In a planned development, like Vespia Lane, National Grid's going to come out, they're going to spray paint it, they're going to tag it all out. Because they have all that information. It's a whole different setup. So yes, they do allow it, and I did say that, but only in planned developments. It's not allowed when they just go down a pole. They don't put that line in. The contractor does. All they do is say, okay, where's the line? They hook it up. That's all they do. They don't care about what's underground. They don't even mark it out. So that's what this is all about.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Got anything on this, Jim?
I do. What you're getting is Mr. Northup's version of this, which is not accurate. So, Mr. Bourbonnais, Rich called me when this first occurred and explained to me the situation. I personally went out and looked at the property, and I concurred with him. It's a tiny road that has all aerials, and there's dozens of other houses there that now would be putting one under the road and giving them an easement across a town road, okay? And once Rich gave me all this information, I think there were 5 reasons with the cement encasement and the whole thing. I agree with Rich. So Mr. Northup called me 3 times. Called me once, I called him back within 10 minutes, he didn't answer. He called me again a week later, I called him back within an hour, he didn't answer. He called me a 3rd time, and I didn't answer, and I called him back. And he became very argumentative on the phone. So he doesn't like the answer. The answer is the answer. The reason it's not on the agenda is because a communication came in, and we do vet them. Can the council take action on this? That was the threshold we used, whether we put it on as a communication or not. I checked with our solicitor. He said the council cannot take action on this. Therefore, it should not go on the agenda. So I'm sorry. That's the answer. You might not like it, but it is what it is. I don't know what else to say.
All right. Any other thoughts up here? Go ahead.
Yeah. Just for the record, for the public, I followed up when Mr. Northup's email came in, first talked with him. I also talked with the town manager. And it was after that first discussion that I was informed that the solicitor had indicated we can't put this on the agenda, we can't take that action. And then I withdrew the request to put it on the agenda. I am, and I explained this to Mr. Northup, I'm interested in this subject while it's a particular house in a particular instance. the members of the council and the staff know, I've had an interest in the issue of dealing with our infrastructure, including electrical lines, down in a particularly sensitive area, which is on Prospect Street as part of it in Matunic, because we have had a history of problems after storms where poles go down, electricity or other utilities go out. I'm not an engineer. I don't know the details about putting them under the roadway as opposed to by aerials. But I do want to get a clarification from Mike. What is the remedy for the denial of the permit? And if it involves an easement, how does it not go to the council?
So it is true that only the council could grant an easement, but before you got to that point, Rich's department would have to first approve the fact that if you gave the easement, they'd be able to do the work, but he hasn't done that. In fact, he said he cannot do that. And so therefore, it would never get to the point of you granting an easement. And, you know, I mean, just think about this. Directors of departments make decision on an hourly basis based on their expertise, their professionalism, et cetera. This is not a case where the council can adopt an ordinance that says, in this particular area, allow it to happen. So that's, you don't have jurisdiction here.
Yeah.
It would first have to be approved, and then one of the conditions would be, oh, and by the way, you need an easement too, but we're not at that point. That is why.
What's Mr. Northup's customer's remedy for the denial of the permit?
I suppose he could go to Superior Court. I mean, I'm not advocating that, but, you know, it's like someone who doesn't get a building permit or someone who doesn't get a license or some other permit. What can they do? They can go to the town manager. Town manager can make a decision, which in this case Jim has, and then from that point, litigation? I'm not suggesting that. I don't want that to happen, but you're asking the question. I don't know where else you go at this point.
Thank you. And I should also point out, in my conversation with Mr. Northup, we had also discussed the fact that he's on a time limitation to do one or the other, the aerial or underground, and he had said the end of August. And that sort of triggered for me that we were not going to be able to resolve this with the council in this. This is the only meeting we had this month.
Come on up. You want to say something?
So first, in reference to the town manager, it's a great thing about technology because they called me. They did call me on July 2nd. And right here you can see I called them back 6 times within 30 seconds after that call, and nobody answered. I didn't.
All right, that is
however,
not relevant.
Understood. I applied for this permit on May 17th. Okay? The permit wasn't processed because despite what the wonderful woman at the desk told me, they would not process it without that additional insurance in place. So it wasn't a $25 fee. I didn't care about that. That's normal. It wasn't a $10. No. It was this permit. They would not process it until my contractor, John Farrar from Earthworks, provided them with proof that he had asserted this additional insurance to perform these actions in the town. So the entire time it sat there, no one said anything to me. No one called me until I reached out and personally came in again and said, what's going on with this? And I said, well, there's no insurance. We're not processing it without the insurance. I was specifically told that. Mr. Farrar had already gone online and filled out everything else. So my point is, to what you said, sir, if the remedy is that the town can't do anything because he has to approve it first, and the very first item in his list of what it really conditions is the town council has to give me an easement, it's a circle. Encasing something in concrete, President, is not
So let me put it this way. We would never consider granting an easement unless it gets approved by the Public Services Director. That's how it would get to us.
Understood. So that is the process from now on.
That is the process that has been articulated by our town solicitor here, who is the town's lawyer.
All right. Okay. Well, then it is what it is, and we'll deal with how we have to deal with it. But I went above and beyond to try to rectify this months ago. And it cost money out of my pocket just to get information from him. Regardless of what he stood here and told you. I can bring in everyone else that was involved, if that would be necessary, to satisfy the council. I don't like having my integrity called into question, specifically when I spent 26 years in the military, 20 years as a police officer, so it's not my side of things. I take precarious notes, I take very detailed notes. I take photos of things that take place. Okay? I do not appreciate that.
All right. So, we still are in public comment. If anyone else in the audience wishes to speak on any matter whatsoever, feel free to come on up. Again, as I said earlier, we just ask that you introduce yourself and limit you to 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Jack Cadman from Wakefield. I'm coming up to talk with just, I guess, like a suggestion to the council, since the topic of changing the town council president was brought up at the last meeting. I didn't bring it up then because I thought it had already gone too long and didn't want to waste people's time. But I was reading the New York Times the other day, and there was an article about different cities' mayors. I think it was on their responses to COVID, and it mentioned Mayor Kamsi Voravong from Newport. And, you know, despite his title, he's just their town council president, or I guess city council president. So I just want to float the idea of renaming like our council president to mayor. I don't know if that would cost a lot of money or even just be totally pointless. I don't know. Just thought I'd bring it up. I don't know what the procedure is to do that. I don't see any downside. I mean, I think it could just bring some extra prestige to the town, but, you know, if it's dumb, I don't know. That's about it. You know.
All right. Thank you, Jack. All right. Anyone else in the audience wish to come up and speak? All right. We're going to move on now. 12 communications. A is an email dated July 28, 2024 from Christopher Ireland, Friends of the South Kingstown Historical Cemeteries, concerning the maintenance of Historic Cemetery Number 2. Christopher, come on up. It is Christopher Iredale. My apologies, sir.
Right, Christopher Iredale, Hunt Avenue, Wakefield. Thank you for the time to speak. I'd like to make one correction. On the communications note, it says the email was the July 28, 2024 from me, from Friends of the South Kingstown Historical Cemeteries, which that is not true. I disassociated from that months ago, and I am here as a volunteer for the Washington County District of the Rhode Island Historical Cemeteries to request action on the following. From the land evidence books of 27 April 1906, Charles A. Fagan and Caroline Fagan executing to be their free act and deed received for record June 28, 1906 at 9:35 a.m. Witnesses with Howard B. Perry, Town Clerk. Councilpersons William Gould, Cardinal Tucker, Charles Clark, Oliver Watson, Frederick Johnson, called grantees, forever quit claim unto said grantees, being members of the Town Council of the Town of South Kingstown, and their successors in this office at all times, interest, property, claim, and demand, or the right to have claim to land known as the Uskapog Cemetery. To have and to hold the same unto them, said grantees and their successors, the cemetery in perpetual trust, for burial purposes forever. They received $500 in perpetual trust for the following purposes: to receive, invest the same, said income for the perpetual care, repair, ornamentation, renewal of walls, gates, driveways, trees, shrubs, and plants around and in Uskapog Cemetery. They also received the sum of $100 for perpetual care to receive and invest for the care of plot number 45 in said cemetery. Said deed and plat accompanying the same and hereby accepted and approved and ordered, recorded in the land evidence records in this town. Being approved June 11, 1906 and voted on. Councilman Watson was hereby appointed to be the custodian of such said funds to invest same and as caretaker to expend the income. With such evidence unfiled in the land records of the town of South Kingstown, it is in fact that the town has full responsibility for the care and maintenance for Historical Cemetery Number 2, located in the town of South Kingstown. The council should hereby direct the town manager to direct the Recreation Department to accept and maintain the cemetery in question. The paperwork evidence was provided to Mr. Orsello at a previous meeting, and there is no evidence that any action was ever taken at this time. At a previous meeting, I read a similar note. I also stated that we would return to the council in the future to learn the whereabouts of said funds and the investment of said funds. 1906, $500. The equivalent today is $17,092.83. $100 then is the equivalent today of $3,419.88. I'm here to request some action on that.
All right. Jim, do we have an update on this?
Maybe I can help, and basically with the help of Luke Murray, there are 8 historical cemeteries for which the town took on maintenance. One of them is Cemetery Number 2, which you referenced. It's Plat 7-4, Lot 10. The town has responsibility based upon agreements made by prior town councils quite a few years, decades ago, to maintain these historic cemeteries. The funding for those cemeteries, like in most towns, has all been combined into one fund. Just made sense in terms of investing the money, et cetera. Luke tells me that as of now, there's $112,000 plus or minus in that fund to maintain those 8 historic cemeteries. Again, the one that you've referenced is part of that. And I'm also told that most likely going forward, this will eventually have to become a budget item because the trust funds, so to speak, are being depleted every year to get the work done. But it is my understanding, and maybe Luke can comment further, that these 8, Perryville, Rose Hill, Congregational Churchyard, Teft, 100 Acre, however, Watson Lot, Oakdale, Queens River, and Perryville are all cemeteries which need to be maintained by the town pursuant to past agreements. So I don't disagree with the gentleman.
All right, Luke Murray, can you come on up?
So I think Mike gave a good synopsis of what it provided, which, acknowledged that Rose Bouchard from our finance department had provided, and I've met with both Rose and Brian on this issue. It's unfortunately falling into finance's lap over time. We accepted these dollars over the years in a perpetual fund. So finance has been assigned the task in previous years to issue contracts of fine maintenance personnel to do sort of minimum maintenance to these cemeteries. It's acknowledged that that may not be adequate. And so we've met with finance on this issue. Quite frankly, finance doesn't want it. They don't see themselves as a grounds crew to go out and issue contracts, right? But these are sort of the in-between things that a town does that we know we have responsibility for. The question is how can we do it better? We're actively working on the issue. I've been having some meetings on it at the direction of the town manager. We'll continue to work on it over the next several months to figure out an action plan. We'll come back to council on that. The current framework would be, we know that at some point the money's going to run out and it would come in-house. It would have to be a budgeted item. The question is, do we wait until it runs out, or do we use what we have in the fund now to capitalize some equipment and start weaving it into the budget so that's not a shock to the system, right? We're using those funds to capitalize some of the initial equipment to sort of bring us in to this new transition. There's some additional benefits that may come out of that, of expanding the crew for cemeteries in addition to relieving some existing pressures on some of our town-owned properties. But that's a discussion we can have in the coming months. But we do acknowledge that we have perpetual care fund, we have ownership of these 8 cemeteries, and we will perform those responsibilities, and we're going to figure out how to do it better.
All right.
Yeah, I remember Mr. Iredale came in, I think, last year, and it was about the Queens River Cemetery at the time, and that did get, essentially the lawn was cut. It was maintained after that. So it's not that there's no maintenance, is that correct?
And well, I'll respond to that because we just cut Queens River. That was the one he identified, and rightfully so. It had gotten, so that is one cemetery we've had a hard time getting a contractor for. So 6 of the sites we have an assigned landscaper for. One of the sites is actually a town employee that we pay on a 1099. He goes out there with his own mower on the side and mows it because we pay cheap money to have him do that. And this is kind of how it's been managed, right? You know, we find people at low cost because we want to be cost effective to go out and mow them, and it's sort of minimum maintenance. Queens River, unfortunately, had gotten out of control. Nobody wanted it, especially this year. So we did pay a crew an overtime to go in and take care of it. We offered it up as parks overtime. Terry and her staff went in and this past Saturday mowed it all and got it to a base level. We'll probably be back there one more time this season to ensure it stays that way. The hope is next year we'll have a better plan in place to maintain that on a more regular basis.
And besides those 8, you did give us a report, or Jim did, that there are dozens of other cemeteries that are not technically our responsibility.
275.
Yeah, there were about 100 that was designated that we could locate, but the 8, these are the ones we're responsible for. So, like Lou said, we've had many discussions about this, and we've talked it over with the solicitor. There's no minimal amount of maintenance. So we're trying to just stay ahead of it. The contractors we've hired no longer want to do it, so now we have to go to Plan B. We'll get it done for this year. Next year we'll address it, and we might have to hire some employees in town assigned to Parks and Rec to do this.
All right.
We're going to have to figure something out about the orphan cemeteries someday, and $600 just isn't going to go 120 years.
Yeah, going forward, anyone who wants to endow perpetual care, it's a yeah, either say no or it's a total different scheme, yes.
But it makes me really happy that, and proud that Mr. Iredale did this with, I'm sure, help from others, and that we're going to live up to our obligations. And that makes me feel happy for the council members that have been here before us and accepted the money and agreed to do the job. So, good. I have a cold too, sorry.
I just had a question for you, Chris. How do you feel about the information that we're sharing tonight, and what's your reaction?
I believe some of it, and some of it I do not. One is, I was there last Friday. I've been going on my own with my own equipment. I bought a trailer so I could tow my tractor up there. I've been going up there Friday afternoons mowing, spending 2 hours at a time, and I get tired of it and I leave. So I've been up there at least 4 times, and I probably got half the cemetery mowed, and when I left Friday, it was not mowed. There's some grass up there that's 18 inches high. Peter Gavitt, the man who owns the turf field around it, last fall, looked at the cemetery and he said, "That is disgusting." So he checked with Sue Signowski. She's chairman of the church. She gave him permission to go in. He took his equipment, and then he totally cleaned the whole cemetery. He took everything out, tree stumps, trees, brush, cleared it out, made a huge pile and burned it. After that, nobody mowed it, so it started to grow. I don't know the gentleman, but a Mr. Simpson supposedly came in and mowed it one time in the spring. I was going to get it burned off. UFD had already agreed they would go do it. Sue had given me permission to get him to go in there and burn it off, just to lower it. But this Mr. Simpson came and he mowed the whole cemetery, so it looked good. Well, over the summer, it's tall again. So I've been going there on my own mowing it. And as of Friday, half of it was mowed, half is not. 22
I was informed Parks and Rec was there Saturday.
They went in, so that was after, okay. So I haven't seen it since. But there's 22 veterans in that cemetery, one being a Civil War vet, and I would go down, it was in the very northeast corner of that cemetery, and I mowed his plot myself in respect for him. And I would appreciate it if the town, over time, would take some responsibility for that one. A town employee did mow it up until the fall, and he had to stop because it was so much brush, so many trees, so many branches, it was damaging his equipment. He told the town, I can't do it anymore. The town had paid him, he told me, between 10 and 15 years to mow that cemetery. When he stopped, I asked Mr. Manny about getting the town to go in there and take care of it. He said, absolutely not, town will not take that responsibility. So that's why we're here. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Chris,
Yes.
other than brush and grass and all that, are there other issues that should be addressed in those cemeteries?
No, I think it's mainly a maintenance thing where if a tree falls or a limb falls, then it's difficult to mow, and the people that were mowing it wouldn't. And if it was maintained properly through time, I don't think that would happen. And I'm not asking for every cemetery in this town to get maintained, because there's, what I know, there's 161 of them. I have heard there's 250 cemeteries in this town. So if the town will accept 8, I have an interest in Uskapog, Queens River Cemetery, and I have an interest, I've adopted one time, only since, I gotta do it again, is Rose Hill Road. When you pull off of Saugatucket, the one on the right. Because the reason the town mows this one out here is because everybody sees it. Everybody sees that one when they go to the landfill, and it's getting in deplorable condition again, but I'll take care of that one, but thank you.
Thank you. All right. It's going to move us to our next item here, 12B. An email dated July 29, 2024 from David Palazzetti tendering his resignation from the Recreation Commission effective September 1, 2024.
I move that we direct the town clerk to send a letter to Dave Palazzetti thanking him for his service to the Rec Commission.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Go ahead. Whoa, hold up.
Sorry. Someone should mention, aside from Dave's service on the commission, he's not only serves on the school building committee and does yeoman's work, he's been at it for 3 years. He was also on the facilities committee with me at the school committee back to 2021. He's been working very diligently, and there's only so many hours in a day. So yes, we should thank him for that service.
Absolutely. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. That's now going to bring us to the end of the meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn. Second.
We got a motion, we got a second. Any discussion? Are we sure?
Positive.
All in favor?
Aye.